Hello, everyone. It's Grace Pedota from the CSE and welcoming you to our weekly Tech Tuesday virtual session. This week, we will be highlighting the best of Summer 2.0 or updates from summer. Before I introduce our moderator today, I would like to take a moment to tell you more about CSE TV on YouTube, the Canadian Securities Exchange forum for conversations with business leaders and entrepreneurs. I will put a link to CSE TV in the chat room, which you can find to the right of your screen. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our moderator today, Mark Francis.
Thank you very much, Grace, and to everyone online for joining us live today. Next Tuesday, we will be back to our regular time at 15 minutes after market close, and we will have Best of Autumn. Today, we are pleased to have two of our companies which presented during the summer providing us updates. Our objective in running Tech Tuesdays is twofold. First, to help these technology companies with increasing traction to gain relevant visibility. And second, to help capital markets players by introducing interesting companies, focusing on whether the technology will have commercial traction and why, and also providing new knowledge of what is happening in innovation. For you as attendees, we do ask that you share ideas and feedback with our presenters, leads, possibly funding after due diligence, referral of someone with unique applicable expertise, or maybe even a potential strategic relationship. You can find our presenters' contact information today in the chat board. With respect, we might refrain from giving management advice unless we are truly experts in the company's particular field, and please don't treat our presenting companies as marketing targets for services. Just a couple of housekeeping matters. You will note a red Reconnect tab at the top of your screen if you happen to lose audio. Just click it and you will be reconnected. And in the unlikely event there are technical problems, we may hit the restart, in which case there's no action required by you. The system will automatically reconnect everyone. We're going to run a little shorter today, probably about 40 minutes. And the chat board may be utilized to ask serious questions. Please be clear as to whom your question is being addressed. And as I neglected to completely amend, I see my speaking notes. A shout out to Ron Higgs, who was our question moderator a couple of times ago. If you weren't on, Ron, I've known Ron as an angel investor for several years. Excellent contract executive and very knowledgeable in the tech world. U.S. angel investor. And note our disclaimer. This presentation is for information only and is not a solicitation to make an investment in either shares or debt or to buy or sell stock. CSE and Mark Francis, as session host, i.e. yours truly, make no representation about any of these companies. If you are interested in the investor pitch, please connect with the companies directly in order to get detailed information. Today, each company will have an 8-minute presentation with their PowerPoint. When you see my face appear, the company will have 15 seconds to wrap up. After all companies are presented, we'll move to Q&A, and today you are stuck with yours truly as question moderator and chief inquisitor. First, a mention of news from Portable Electric, which presented July 28th. They have announced a deal with PG&E to provide backup power for medically vulnerable people in California during the planned power outage events, which seem to be happening more frequently in California these days, given the interruptible green power on their grid. Today, we have as presenters Shea Martin, CEO of Brew out of Regina, and Andrew Holman, CEO and co-founder of Inmedix out of the US. I think he spoke with us from Maine last time, but is often on the, he may be back on the Pacific coast. Let's start with Shea. Shea has a software development background. He worked on oil field exploration software and billing inventory software as an AI developer for video games, including the NHL, NFL, and rugby, and on military simulations for the Canadian Navy. But he has always loved beer and business. And if you want to see his previous presentation, of course, you can go to the session we had on August 18th. So Shea, over to you.
Hello, everyone. So I'm just going to give you a quick synopsis for those of you who missed my previous presentation. Then I'll give a quick update of what's been happening with us. So I like to start out with an anecdote. In 1849, when the gold rush was taking shape in California and everyone was rushing out to stake their claim and get rich, two men had different approaches. And Levi Strauss and Sam Brennan became two of the richest men of the 49 gold rush by supplying both pans and shovels and pickaxes to the miners. So I'm here to tell you why Brew Ninja is the pickaxe for the craft beer boom. So the story starts with a friend who is a brewer. I had just moved to Regina and there wasn't many craft breweries, and so I was kind of disappointed. But right soon after that, a new brewery opened up and I ended up befriending the brewer. And I noticed a lot of pain points they were having. So the final straw was one getting stood up for our Friday night plans because he was working late doing the federal excise tax for the brewery that month. Later that week, when he showed me the report, I realized that software could have done this report in seconds with the right data. So this is what we see in a lot of breweries. This is actually really common. Smart people, but just have trouble running their business in a proper workflow. They often are using QuickBooks payments, which is very expensive, or even doing card not present transactions. Brewing is tracked on crumpled up brew sheets. Transfers and packaging are often not tracked at all. Costing, if it is done on a magical spreadsheet that only one person is allowed to touch. Sales staff operate like lone wolves with no insight into production, and deliveries are tracked on a whiteboard along with whatever else somebody decides to scribble there. Small accounting packages are just not robust enough. Poor communication can and does lead to lost sales and deliveries, and regulatory tracking is very time-consuming and error-prone. Oh, I forgot to advance my slides here. So a holistic solution is needed. Brew Ninja and QuickBooks is an ERP or management system plus a CRM designed specifically for a brewery. It involves and benefits the brewers, operations personnel, accountants, sales, and even the delivery staff. Our production system tracks not only inventory, but the data required for compliance with the regional and federal governments. Our invoicing solution provides a safe, efficient, and low-cost method to get paid quicker. And our sales and keg tracking solutions offer built-in value. Our costing and reporting provide the data for brewers required for brewers to make better decisions for their business. And our structured production and sales process provides efficiency and compliance that can save the brewery up to 40 hours in their month. So we're really confident in the value we provide to breweries. We save time by letting us keep your accounting up to date, including work in progress accounting. We provide reports that make sense for the industry rather than mining various sources to get the data you need. Complex taxation rules that plague the industry are handled instantly by us, and you get peace of mind knowing that we're tracking your regulatory data. Brew Ninja takes the place of a dedicated keg tracking system that some of our customers use, and even breweries who say they only want to use the inventory component soon find that Brew Ninja has become the hub of their brewery. So our engagement metrics back this up. During COVID, we've only lost one customer and we have a 97% retention rate. And this speaks to the fact that Brew Ninja has become an essential service for breweries. So I talked about our engagement metrics. 80% of staff in a brewery log in on a daily basis, and combined, a brewery can use up to 7 hours of daily use. So it's a very sticky product. So we're looking to expand into the US right now. I'm into the update portion here. The US is an obvious next target. The obvious benefits are that it's 10 times larger, it's easy to service, there's no language barrier, there's lots of QuickBooks and Square payments, both of which we integrate with. Now, COVID cases are still climbing steadily, but we are seeing business owners there not overly concerned. Now, maybe a reality check is coming, but at this point, we are still able to sell into the US quite well. So Q1 is the most likely time we will expand into the US, but Canada, we still have a strong supply of leads in Canada. So we're going to take our time moving into the US to make sure the time is right. Growing faster we're growing faster and working out some of the growing pains of bringing on more customers faster. We want to work out those kinks before expanding to ensure that when we do have a big push into the US, that we're well prepared for it. We'll start with the Pacific Northwest and then California, followed by other states doing a regional rollout. The other option, the UK, is a really interesting option. COVID cases are going down there. they have a unified taxation rule, and they have a high number of breweries. So the unified taxation rule makes it really easy for us to gain product knowledge and become experts in the area, whereas in the States, taxation can vary even from county to county. So I don't have to tell you guys how important timing is to the startup industry. And so there's already a general move towards digital solutions in the industry. We no longer have to explain to breweries why they need a solution. It's more about explaining to them the benefits of our solution. But the big game changer here is mandatory lot tracking, which is going live for, it says 2020, but that's actually been pushed back to 2021 with COVID. And lot tracking basically means you have to be able to trace a can of beer on a retail shelf all the way back through the delivery truck, through your brewery, every tank it touched, and then know every ingredient and which supplier it came from, and even which lot at that supplier it came through. So it's really, on paper, a fool's game, and makes Brew Ninja really essential. So we got a quick personnel update. We finally hired our first full-time salesperson. You can see on here, this orange arrow is when Matt Jensen started, and you can see how sales have taken off. So we really think we're getting great value out of Matt. Actually, in July and September, he was just on contract, and so he started full-time in November 1st. So we will be bringing on additional sales staff, but I really want to measure the return on investment of our first full-time sales personnel. And also, we want to use this time to build out a really repeatable sales process. When we were interviewing Matt, he had a really great quote. He said, "The next hire should have a complete game plan that is proven to work already." So we started 2019 off with one brewery and an MRR of $350. That's it. We ended up with the year with 21 breweries and an MRR of 2,600. This year we're on a pace up to have an MRR of 10,000 a month and 50 breweries, and all of this while bootstrapping. So here's a quick look at our plans. We've had a slight change of plans. We always knew we could support any industry that packaged product and is regulated. So we've been formulating a plan to go into the general food industry around 2023. This market is 300 times larger, and greatly increases our opportunity. So, and last time I was on, we had just started our raise. COVID put a hold on that, so we just started it again. We've now raised half our round with Maple Leaf Angels out of Toronto leading the round. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you, Shea. And now Andrew Holman. Dr. Holman has validated innovative solutions for some of the most challenging unmet clinical needs, including pain, fight or flight stress, and immunology. And as a rheumatologist, Dr. Holman specialized in autoimmune disease, fibromyalgia, and hypermobility syndrome treatment and research for 25 years. Andrew?
Hey, thanks very much. I started the timer. So, hey, it's fun to be back. I certainly had a good time presenting this in August. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Inmedix is a Seattle-based biotech. I'm the CEO and co-founder. Again, I'm Dr. Andrew Holman. I'm a practicing rheumatologist, at least for 25 years, which means I take care of young women with crippling diseases primarily. Inmedix was formed to hold my patents. I was fortunate enough to figure things out, and I want to let you know we call it innovative medical discovery, not iterative, because we address some very, very challenging, risky areas. For instance, fibromyalgia, we were able to discover how dopamine controls that disorder and sell patents for $10 million. So this next approach we've been working on also about 20 years. And if you think about the basis of medicine, one of the most fundamental obstacles in healthcare delivery is understanding why patients respond differently to the same treatment. And think about that for a second. It's very frustrating for me to give a medication that I expect to work and it doesn't work. It's equally frustrating for the patient. We're developing a new diagnostic, a new SaaS platform, and a new strategy to solve this problem. And let me start to explain. So let's take a look at what we all will understand quite well. You go to the doctor's office, you're in the waiting room with other people. To your left is somebody looking pretty good, and you're kind of hoping that's your future. On your right, you've got someone not looking good at all, and you think, oh my gosh, is that my future? And if you keep going to the doctor enough, you may be that other person and constantly see patients doing well, but not you. And you ask yourself, and you ask them, why am I not doing as well? And you can compare notes in the office. And then you go talk to me privately, and you ask, how come I'm not doing as well as Mrs. So-and-so? HIPAA rules in the US, I can't talk about the other patients. But the answer turned out to be really right in front of us, and the patients had told us many, many times. It turns out that stress is as bad for you as you think it is. And it may not cause every disease, but it certainly activates disease, it intensifies disease. It makes heart disease worse, makes hypertension worse, makes pain worse, makes sleep disturbance worse. You get the idea. So 20 years ago, with all the challenges we had in my office, we simply asked, is there a way to measure stress, the hard science of stress, accurately? And the answer was maybe, weren't sure, nobody really knew, certainly wasn't on the market. But the idea was that if it could be identified and validated, could we then mitigate how it affected disease and then get current treatments to work better? And the answer is yes and yes. So let me walk you through very quickly for those who might have missed last time. The way you measure stress is through a technology called heart rate variability that looks at the beat-to-beat variation of the heart with respiration. It is an indirect measure of fight or flight activity in the brainstem. Now you may say, I've heard all about this. It's been around a long time. Well, you're right. There's consumer, there's Fitbit, there's Apple. They're not regulatory approved. They're not particularly accurate, but they're out there and with Whoop and so forth. But there's also current medical grade HRV, and we compare to them quite favorably. For instance, they use algorithms from 1996, which is the world standard. We have a Russian version that adds to that called Next Generation, which has outputs for the first time of fight or flight activity. Their ECG precision is accurate to 1/10 of a second. Remember, this is hospital grade. We're accurate to 1,000th of a second. We sample the ECG signal at an industry-leading 8,000 times per second with proprietary filtering. Our test is 5 minutes, theirs is 30. We lease you our device for $6,000. You have to buy it for $65,000. These are US numbers. And no one has, what we've brought is this innovation of cloud, a sort of cloud management system, which makes it really much more of a business. Our innovation is called the ANS NeuroScan. It is a seamlessly integrated test in an office like mine, where the patient lies on the table, doesn't disrobe. We put the little pads on the ankles and wrists. They lie there for 5 minutes. We collect about 350 beats. Goes to the iPad. iPad goes to the cloud. Cloud is where the analysis is and data storage, and then it comes back down, and it reads out like the picture you're seeing, like a lab test with various different numbers that measure your fight or flight activity, so that I can make a decision in real time. I don't wait for it to come back, in 3 days, nothing like that. It is a biomarker that is particularly valuable. It measures stress, but it's actionable. That's the key here. It can predict outcomes. It can manage, improve the management of disease, and it has health economic benefits. And it's all structured on a cloud platform, which I'll talk about a little bit more. So the business model is simple. We put this in the doctor's office for $6,000 US lease. We don't sell it. In the US, current CPT codes will allow the doctor to get $91 to administer the test and $64 for us over and over and over and over again. So it has two recurrent revenue streams, essentially a medical SaaS business. And we're targeting rheumatologists first, which are paid in the lowest quartile. So this is expected to raise about $150,000 for an MD in the US, which really moves the needle. So I'm a rheumatologist. So where do you apply the world's first accurate diagnostic of stress? Well, we do it in autoimmune disease because it's the most expensive field of medicine, $25 billion spent on 5 million US patients. 75% fail to respond adequately despite what you may see on TV. This is an illustration of what happens to a patient on the left with inflamed joints. If you stress them, they all light up, and it becomes so active I can't treat it. The concept is called immunoautonomics, and we're the deep domain experts in the world. But here's why we matter. It's based on data. It's based on evidence. We've published 9 studies already. We're the first and only to predict outcome a year in advance. We're the first and only to guide how to increase that miserable remission rate of 25% to 79%. And we use generic drugs for restless leg syndrome. And we also have the distinction of being projected to save, at least in the US, up to $35 billion in rheumatoid arthritis over 10 years. So we solve a number of pain points. Patients get better outcomes, take less toxic drugs. I get to be a better doctor. I have a revenue stream, and we're a lifeline to payers. It's a very large market within our IP, 2.5 billion achievable, and we're protected by utility patents, trade secrets, exclusive license, deep domain expertise. We're targeting 3,800 US rheumatologists first, and we expect to be on the market in 15 months. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking this picture here. This is what it looks like to run a big clinical lab with a lot of overhead, a lot of people to make your diagnostic support for the doctor. And we're turning it into this. These are electronic biomarkers. And we're taking blood tests here. And we're actually using electronic analysis of the ECG with mathematics to give the same kind of outputs. So I want to thank you for your attention. Again, new stress diagnostic, new cloud platform, new clinical strategy. We just closed our $3.7 million seed round, but we're working on a Series A. We expect to be on the market in about a year. So thank you.
Excellent, Andrew, and congratulations on closing that financing. Let's bring Shea back now. And just a reminder to both of you, when you're not speaking, please turn your mic off. So today I'll be going fairly easy on our presenters. To hear questioning of each of these two, I would refer you to the replays of August 11th for Inmedix and August 18th for Brew Ninja. So let's start at the beginning and talk about the genesis for the idea. And of course, Shea, you've already talked about your genesis. But what were the next couple of steps which were taken once you started it out? And let's go Shea and then Andrew.
Yeah, so for me, it was actually at a time in my life where I had a bit of spare time, and I can't handle spare time, so I built out a pilot project and took it to the brewery and showed it how it solved some of their pain. And to be honest, nothing came of it for a little over a year. And the brewery came under new management, and the new manager saw the same pain I saw and started looking for a solution. And one of the staff members said, you know, this guy was in here and showed us this software that looked like it would do this. And so he reached out, and we kind of went through the software, and he identified, you know, he goes, these are going to be problems that it doesn't solve. We need, before we can start using it, it needs to solve these problems as well. So we set a 6-month deadline, have all these points solved in 6 months, and we'll have a hard go live. And so we kind of worked around the clock to get that ready, and that was kind of the nexus of it.
Well, I can, if you finished, it's they call rheumatology the consult of last resort. There's a reason for that. You go to every doctor before you come to see me. And it is, for some people, a miserable specialty, but for those of us who like puzzles, we're well suited to it. And basically what happened is that awful truth that as we hit 1998, Enbrel, etanercept came out of Inmedix in Seattle after a startup, for 18 years. They got bought by Amgen eventually. And all of a sudden, 1 in 4 patients had this miracle, hallelujah cure. It was just profound. And we got greedy as rheumatologists saying, where's the next, okay, what do I got to do now? And we were looking at the next drug coming along. And the sad truth was that every biological intervention we had has the same problem for 20 years, 25% response rate. So necessity was the mother of invention. I just happened to be working with some people who were interested in stress responses and pain, and that education in fibromyalgia taught us about stress. As we started treating stress and pain, the stress and the immune system connection became clear, and we started seeing profound impact on mitigating stress for patients with autoimmune disease. Following breadcrumbs, that's all it is.
Very good. And so in a similar vein, talking about the technology, was there a large technology push at the very beginning, followed now by refinements and a focus on business development? Or do you find the technology advancement effort is still almost as intense as it was at the beginning? Let's start with Andrew.
Yeah, no, ours is very different. Ours is, we're heretical on many, many levels. We're not looking for the right drug for the right person. We're bringing a concept that raises all ships. When you look at a software business, you're thinking, okay, how about 2.0, 3.0, 4.0? No. The software that has been designed and discovered to measure what we want has been in stone and secretly harbored away as trade secrets for 25 years. And there have been lots and lots of people and countries that have tried to duplicate it. So when we identified the best HRV in the world with a company called Omega in Finland, we have no interest in changing the software because we've already shown we're 90% sensitive and 97% specific. There's lots of room to make it worse and very little room to make it more sensitive and specific. Again, it's heresy, right? But sometimes innovation is heresy.
Yeah, I think for us, there has definitely been a shift. I mean, it's not just solve a set of problems as fast as possible. We're kind of more into a refinement phase where let's find a way to solve a problem better. And also, we're now busy at work building out tools that help us onboard customers and scale the business faster. So there's definitely been a focus on a focus shift on the technical challenges.
Okay, good. And now let's talk about geographic spread. Shea, I would like you to talk a little bit more about the cost of opening up new markets, and if you are viewing the U.S. expansion in a particular targeted fashion regionally. And Andrew, do you find that you have any geographic focus going forward at the beginning?
Yeah, I can start. So I touched a bit on this in my slides. This has been a hot topic here recently. We were all set to go into the U.S. For Q1, but we're very closely monitoring COVID. We do almost all our demos, even with Canadian breweries, are done online. So it's not that that's a barrier, but there's still a lot of value in getting into trade shows, going to exhibitions and stuff like that, and building your brand. So that has us a little worried about going to the U.S. right now. So we're actually looking at delaying it a little longer and seeing how long we can milk the Canadian teeth, so to speak, a little longer. As far as cost goes, I think what we would do is look at hiring a U.S.-based salesperson to operate down there. So there is a cost with that, and the wage associated with that position in the U.S. is a little higher. But other than that, it's not a huge expense, just given the fact that we operate virtually, and also the world has learned to operate virtually a lot better too.
Yeah, I think so. In biotech, business is more like a light switch. You have to be adequately prepared, and once you get regulatory approval, that pretty much outlines where your territory is going to be. And so we're launching in the U.S., but also we'll be launching in the U.K. Once you launch, doctors are generally segregated into early adopters, middle, and late adopters. And the early adopters cost a lot less to access than middle and late. With this technology, we're starting in the Pacific Northwest, where I'm very well known. But our scientific advisors at Stanford, Harvard, Oxford, Cleveland Clinic. So we kind of have regional areas that will be drawing in the rheumatologists there. And then we're also talking now to other specialties who may want to be paid by insurance to measure stress. So we're getting ready for other types of physicians who may be jumping in, even though they weren't our primary targets.
Okay, well, that's good. So you've led me almost, Andrew, directly into another question, and that is centers of influence in your business and how you build your relationships with them, how you manage those. So let's hear from each of you about that, starting with Andrew.
Yeah, well, this is medicine, so do no harm, right? There's snake oil everywhere. So the first is using the regulatory approval as your stamp of quality, and then developing a scientific advisory board that can then be thought leaders to then share the word and the research with your customers, i.e. your doctors, right? So that was one of the very first things I did. Fortunately, I'm old enough, sorry to say, to know a lot of the thought leaders around the world, and we've already had a big success with fibromyalgia, so we've already gotten that work into treatment guidelines. So we're very familiar with this whole political nature of, if we come on the market, we push it out. Fortunately, we're not pushing anybody out, which is nice. But yes, you have to be selective on who gives your message, and so you pick the best, brightest, most influential you can, and that's what we did 5 years ago. And then we brought the national meeting and did special educational centers there for this term called immunoautonomics, which we coined, and describes this relationship of stress and the immune system.
Yeah, I think for us, given the fact that we're bootstrapping and on limited funding, it's hard to become a global thought leader for sure, but we have noticed thought leadership pieces just on our website blog have generated a fair bit of traction. I guess that's otherwise known as content marketing. But where we really find it is beneficial is when we go into a region, and that's why when we go into a new region, we try and do a regional rollout, learn all their taxation rules, learn how business is done there. Because a lot of the times the people we're selling to have never run a business before. They find they're relying on us for, well, how do you think it's best to structure our general ledgers for taxation, and how do you think it's best to set up my warehouses, and so we kind of become, rather than just selling to them, we kind of become a trusted advisor for them. So I guess on a hyper localized level, we're kind of becoming an influencer or an advisor.
Okay, so each of you have made reference to other potential markets, other potential verticals. And Shea, you've talked about the food space. Would each of you talk about the cost of entering each new vertical? And Shea, a question in particular for you is, as you haven't yet achieved dominance in the one, are you going to move before you've achieved dominance with the smaller breweries, or are you going to do that in two different stages? So start with Shea.
Yeah, definitely in two different stages. I definitely do not want to lose focus on this market. There's lots of leads left in this market. I merely mentioned that we are investigating it, just so we have a plan down the road to expand our market, right? I don't want to, breweries are obviously a niche market. I need to expand into the other ones. So the plan is between 2 and 3 years from now to expand into that food market. And the cost of that, while it's not super expensive to change the technology from a marketing and staff training perspective, it's not going to be cheap. So the anticipation is we would raise a Series A at that time of a couple $1 million to provide the funding to go into that market, and not only limp into it, but kind of go into it with a bang.
Thank you. So in my field, when you have a new indication, a new customer base, it usually requires going to a regulatory agency, getting approval for that, right? That's not required with what we're doing, because we're measuring stress, but stress has applications across many fields of medicine. So what you have to do for any clinician like me is give me evidence, right? So it's not a regulatory answer once you get original clearance. So we went to oncology. There are 4 papers already showing stress stratifies survival. There's a beautiful paper in Danish paper shows that stress actually predicts who gets cancer. Somebody might want to have some of those offline. I'm happy to get you some of that information. So the idea is you may invest $4 to $5 million in a couple of clinical trials. It sounds like a lot of money, but it could give you a return in $100, $200 million in revenue coming into dermatology, oncology, cardiology, stress, pain. You get the idea. So we're in an advantageous situation for expansion.
Very good. So both of you have identified a lot of blue sky. Is your objective to grow to cash flow or to grow to be bought out in 1 year or 4 years? Andrew, and then Shea.
Well, I talk to my investors, right? You might be surprised that the lead investors in mine would like to stay private and spin off a rather sizable dividend every year. I don't know if that'll be what we eventually do. The professionals we talk to are looking at IPO, and that's pretty classic for a biotech, especially with a type of business that generates cash so quickly as a reimbursement-based business like we have. So we will be the target of companies that want to expand their diagnostic opportunity. That is a difficult growth area, but Quest Diagnostics, LabCorp, and so forth will also be a target of data companies because of our cloud-based analytics and because of all that data we're going to have. So the Apple, Verily, Amazon, and Microsoft. So we're not going to turn away offers, but I think we're interested in building this business and to the highest profitability possible.
So it's interesting. I actually was approached the other day, and it's just recently, the last couple of months, I've been approached by the investment banks representing various people. One of them divulged who they were representing, but I mean, they were looking at us for acquisition. It was obviously too early, but we set up meetings to keep in touch. To specifically answer your question, for context, I'm competitive and I love solving puzzles. And the way I look at this puzzle is if I grow it as fast as I can in order to be bought out, that gives me two options. At the end of the day, I can keep running it for cash flow, or I can sell it. If I grow it as a lifestyle business, I only have one option. So my goal is to build it as fast as I can, be prepared for a buyout, and then I'll have options at the end of the day.
Okay, very good. So here's the last question I'll put to each of you. Milestones over the next 6 to 12 months, what should investors be looking at in terms of what your objectives are and what you hope to achieve? Shea and then Andrew.
Sure. I mean, the biggest thing to look for is for us to expand into a new territory. I mean, we'd like to start with the Pacific Northwest and strictly because there's a high concentration of breweries there, and take advantage of word of mouth. So that will be the big thing. And, over the next year, I would like to get over to 150 breweries and become close to profitability.
Yeah, ours is pretty straightforward. We passed a lot of milestones already. We're working with Starfish Medical in Victoria, BC to do our final engineering, and our submission to CDRH and FDA. So that is the singular inflection point that was part of the last round. So watch for that.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, both of you, our presenters, for joining us today. Shea Martin, CEO of Brew Ninja, Dr. Andrew Holman, CEO of Inmedix. And may you both have continued success in expanding your businesses. Thank you to our attendees for your time today. Go to the company websites and learn more about these companies. And if you have a lead for them, do connect. And now let's bring on Grace Pedota of CSE for closing remarks.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you to everyone who joined our session today, and thank you to our presenters. When you have a moment, go to CSE TV on YouTube. I provided the link in the chat, which should appear to the top right corner on your screen. This session, along with all of our other great content the CSE publishes, will be on CSE TV on YouTube. Make sure to tune in next Tuesday for companies from Best of Honor.